For those of you that are new here, my name is Dante. I am currently a financial analyst / auditor / accountant for the state. I used to work at one of the big four, and I've been doing financial analysis for the last 4-ish years, and I've been passionate about personal finance and financial literacy for the last 6 or so years. This is something that's super important to me. I've dedicated a lot of personal time and professional time to learning everything that I can to help people avoid mistakes that we should have been taught in school. Today, we're talking about something that's super important and something that I've been wanting to talk about for a while, and that's cars. How to buy a car without breaking the bank. If you want to be smart with your money and you don't want to make any car buying mistakes, stick around and I'll share my top tips for buying a car the financially responsible way. First things first, this is going to be something that's going to be reiterated so many times in basically anything else that I make. You need a budget. That's the first thing. You need to set a realistic budget. Before you even start looking at cars, you need to figure out how much you can actually spend. And I mean actually spend. Not how much you want to spend, not how much you think you can spend, how much you actually can spend. Here is an easy rule to think about it. Try to keep all of your car expenses, and this is all of them, like car payments, car note, insurance, gas, repairs, all of this under 20% of your take-home pay. This will give you a more accurate representation of what you can actually afford. If you want, you can do 20% of your gross pay, so before tax, but more realistically you should do net income, like after taxes and deductions and everything like that. Again, this is just a rule. It's not law, it's not anything like that. It's just a guide basically. You can spend more than that, but that's kind of eating into income that you can use for investments or any other things like that. As far as your monthly car payment, let's say your parents take care of your insurance for you. You're buying a really reliable car, so you don't really have to worry about maintenance and repairs and stuff like that. Let's just say that's the case and you only want to focus on the monthly car payment. This one you can kind of do 10 to 15% of your income. So let's say you're doing that same $70,000. If you want to calculate how much you should be paying on just your car payments, $70,000 salary, 10 to 15%, you're looking at $7,000 to $10,500 a year on car payments. You can divide that by 12, figure out what you should be paying monthly. You don't have to do this annually. You can take your monthly income, you can take salary, annual income, you can take, whatever and use the same results. It's just easier with annual for me, just for, illustrative purposes. Why is any of this important? Cars cost more than the price tag. In addition to dealer markups and hardly ever getting MSRP for anything ever, you have to pay for gas, insurance, sometimes repairs. So you need to make sure that you account for all of that and you make sure that you can afford all of that safely and comfortably. Next, you would want to save for a down payment. The more money you can put down at the start means that the less money you'll have to take out on a loan. Again, this is if you're financing. If you're paying cash, probably not watching this video at all, but usually talking specifically for just those that want to finance. The more money you put down, smaller monthly payments, less money paid in interest is moral of the story. If you're buying a new car, I would say a good estimate to do is to do 20% of the car's value as a down payment. This is for a new car. If you're buying a used car, used cars usually have lower MSRPs, but you usually pay for that with higher interest rates because banks don't want to put their money on a unreliable car that's used. There's a lot of factors, but again, 20% for a new car, 10% down for a used car. Speaking of new versus used, a big money saving tip is to consider buying a used or nearly new car. I think everybody knows by now that new cars lose a lot of value in depreciation basically as soon as you drive it off the lot. I think it's roughly like 18% of the value goes down. If you care about resale value, if you care about your car's worth, this is something that you would want to keep in mind. Usually if you buy a car that's just a couple of years old, you've already kind of skipped past most of that depreciation curve. Your car is still going to lose value, especially depending on how many miles you put on it and how many repairs you need to do to it, and if you get any body damage or anything like that. But if you buy a couple of years old used, you can skip most of that depreciation curve, so you lose less money essentially. You can save thousands of dollars this way and still get a car that's in great shape and great value and still have a lot of these, modern electronics in the car, like, navigation assist, lane keep assist, cruise control, all of that stuff. You can still get some pretty modern technology even when you're buying, like 3 to 4 or 5 years old. That's personally what I'm trying to do. I'm looking at certified pre-owned. I don't think going through private dealers and, not certified pre-owned is worth it unless you know exactly what you're doing. Sometimes with certified pre-owns, you can still get like gap insurance and, sometimes they're still covered by warranties. And I think that is valuable for me personally, but For you, it may be different. Another tip I would suggest is to shop around and get pre-approved before you walk into the dealership. You shouldn't just buy the first car that you see. You want to shop around, check prices at different dealerships, even look at private sellers, websites like Kelley Blue Book and Edmunds to see what fair prices for the cars that you're interested in. They may not be the most accurate, but it kind of gives you a ballpark to make sure that you're not getting royally fucked by the dealership markups and whatnot. Again, from the research that I've done the last year, it seems like getting a car for MSRP is really difficult unless you're really good at negotiating, which I'm not the best negotiator, but I've been watching a lot of videos. I've been informing myself and teaching myself these things to make sure that I'm at the very least not getting taken advantage of. As far as pre-approvals, this is something that can help you make sure that when the salesmen are trying to ask you like what your monthly payment, what you want it to be, they're not giving you like a 15% APR for a new car or something like that. Getting pre-approved at usually local credit unions can have better rates than bigger banks. I would suggest opening a quick savings account with a local credit union and just make sure you're putting like some money in there so that you're seen as an active customer. And sometimes they'll give you, good rates for car loans specifically, and even other incentives. Another tip is to keep loans short and to avoid leasing. To talk about leasing first, I think it sounds like a good deal because you usually get lower payments if you don't expect to drive that much, because leases usually come with 10, 12, 15,000 mile annual limits, and you get charged if you go over that. Most of the time it's not really that great of a deal. With leasing, you're basically renting the car, you're not building any equity, and you don't really save money in the long term because it's going to be a little bit more expensive to buy out than if you were to finance it and buy it from the start. If you expect to buy a car or lease a car like a Range Rover or Land Rover that is probably going to break down in 2 milliseconds after you drive it off the lot, leasing might be a good idea because that will be covered and it won't be on you. Also, if you buy a car that has a really steep depreciation curve and a car that loses a lot of its value, if you lease it, you don't have to bear any of the depreciation costs because you lease the vehicle for 3 years as an example. The depreciation curve already went through the steepest part. You give it back to the dealership. Now they have to worry about, either selling the car with miles on it and basically losing a lot of money. If you don't really care about depreciation, that probably doesn't matter, but some people out there might want to do that. That's you. Go for it. Another thing, watch your credit score. Your credit score is super, super important when buying a car. The better your score, the lower your interest. The lower your interest, the lower overall cost of the entire term of the loan is going to be. And a lot of these incentives that you see online, 2% interest rates, 3% interest rates, if you look at the small print, it's actually only for well-qualified buyers, and that's usually like 750 or above. I'll have a video up that you can click on tips to increase your credit score and the biggest factors that contribute to your credit score. The last two things, you want to avoid add-ons and negative equity. They're going to try and sell you fancy floor mats, extended warranties. These are going to add a lot to your loan, and you probably don't need them. When you're on the show floor, they're going to be telling you how awesome the car you want to buy is, and then when you go back to the finance department, they're going to tell you how shit it is. When you breathe on it, it's going to break down and you should buy the extended warranty. If they do that, just say no, you don't need the extended warranty. Basic powertrain warranty, drivetrain warranties, those are sufficient usually, and you don't really need them. If you don't want extras, you can pay for them separately instead of rolling them into your loan, or depending on the car, there's probably aftermarket parts that are cheaper and easy to install yourself. Also, don't roll over debt from your old car into your new loan. This just makes it harder to pay off your car. Last one, take your time and negotiate. Like I said, I've been researching cars for over the last year. Find good deals. Wait out if you can. Be patient. At the end of the year, dealerships are usually trying to get rid of older models on their lots and make room for newer models. They might have some good interest rate deals. If you know what you're doing, there's some good lease deals. Just be patient. Take your time and negotiate. If the deal doesn't feel right, or it feels too expensive, or you feel like you're being pressured, walk away. They will for sure try to walk back whatever they said that has made you uncomfortable, or at the very least they push too hard to get a sale onto you and they've lost business. Don't rush into it. Be patient and give yourself as much knowledge leverage and financial leverage as you can. So a quick recap: set a budget, stick to it. You want to save for a down payment, 20% for a new car, 10% for a used car. Focus on what you need, not just what you want. Buy used or nearly new if you can. 3 years is a really good spot, past the steepest part of that depreciation curve at the very least. Shop around and get pre-approved for a loan. If you get pre-approved, you have something in your pocket that you can use as leverage if the dealerships are trying to screw you over. Keep your loan short short and avoid leasing. Again, leasing just isn't really a good deal. It's going to cost more than financing. Watch your credit score. Again, I have a video to help increase your credit score and the factors that affect that. Just try and get your credit score as high as you can before you think about buying it. I know some people don't have that luxury, but just watch your credit score, make sure it's good. Skip the add-ons. Don't roll over old debt into your new car, and take your time, be patient, and negotiate. If you found this video helpful, hit that like button and subscribe. God, this sounds so cringe saying that. I'm trying to make this a side business. I'm really passionate about teaching people finances, and hopefully I can help people save money. And that's honestly just my goal. If you have any questions or any car buying stories, drop them in the comments. I'd love to hear from you, and I hope everybody's doing well, and thank you for watching. Bye-bye.